The park was quiet except for the sound of children laughing somewhere beyond the autumn trees. A man in an expensive coat stood frozen on the walking path, his Italian leather shoes rooted to the concrete as if the ground had opened beneath him and swallowed everything he thought he knew. 30 feet away, a woman spun 2 little girls in circles while they shrieked with joy. The woman was laughing too, her natural hair catching the afternoon light, her face radiant with the kind of happiness he had not seen in 2 years. But it was the girls who stopped his heart. One of them scrunched her nose when she giggled. The exact gesture he made when something genuinely amused him. The other tilted her head to the side while catching her breath, studying her sister with quiet curiosity. His grandmother used to tilt her head the same way. His lips parted, but no sound came out. His chest tightened until breathing felt like drowning. The woman looked up. Their eyes met across the distance, across the wreckage of everything they had been, and the color drained from her face. "Mommy," one of the girls tugged at her hand. "Mommy, who is that man? Why is he staring at us?" The woman pulled both children closer, her arms wrapping around them like shields. "Nobody, baby." She forced the words out, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay calm. "Just someone Mommy used to know. Nobody." The word hit him like a bullet he never saw coming. He had searched for her for 2 years. Hired investigators. Chased every lead into dead ends. Tortured himself with questions that had no answers. But standing there in that park, watching those little girls laugh, watching them look back at him with curious innocent eyes that held pieces of his own reflection, he realized the truth. He had not just lost his wife. He had lost his daughters. And he never even knew they existed. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. Now let me take you back. Back before that park. Back before those little girls with their matching braids and innocent laughter. Back to the man he used to be, the empire he built, and the moment when everything was still possible. Back to the night when love walked through his door. And to the morning when he destroyed it all. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that scraped the sky like a monument to ambition. Glass walls framed the city in every direction, turning the world below into a living painting of lights and movement and lives too small to matter. He stood at those windows most nights. Whiskey in hand. Tie loosened. Watching. The furniture behind him cost more than most people earned in a year. Italian leather. Clean lines. The kind of design that appeared in magazines and meant nothing to the soul. The art on the walls was original, purchased at auctions where rich people competed to own beautiful things they would never truly see. Everything in this space gleamed. Nothing in this space breathed. He took a slow sip of whiskey and watched a couple walk hand in hand on the street far below. They stopped under a streetlight. The man said something. The woman laughed, threw her head back, and kissed him like the whole world had disappeared. He looked away. Feelings were liabilities. He had learned that lesson early and learned it well. The foster kid who used to dream about belonging, who used to cry himself to sleep wondering why nobody wanted him, that kid had died a long time ago. And the man who remained had built something the kid never could have imagined. An empire. A name that opened doors. A life that looked perfect from the outside and felt like absolutely nothing on the inside. The intercom on the wall crackled to life. "Sir, your morning briefing materials are ready. Should I send them up?" He glanced at the clock. 3 in the morning. He had not slept. Again. "Send them. I will be in the office by 6. "Yes, sir." The intercom went silent. The penthouse returned to its natural state. Quiet so thick it pressed against the ears. Stillness so complete it felt like being buried alive in luxury. He finished the whiskey. Set the glass down. Straightened his tie even though no one was watching. Another day. Another series of moves on a board where he always played to win. But standing at those windows, watching the city pulse with lives he would never understand, he could not shake the feeling that he had built something magnificent and completely meaningless. Not that it mattered. He had stopped asking whether things mattered a very long time ago. Morning arrived the way it always did. Grey light bleeding through glass walls. The smell of coffee from the machine that turned on automatically at 5:30. The silence of a home that had never known the sound of another voice. He showered, dressed, selected a suit that cost more than his mother had earned in a month during the years when she was still alive. The thought flickered through his mind and he pushed it away, the way he always did, the way he had trained himself to do since he was 17 years old and standing at her graveside with no one beside him. The office was a 20-minute drive through traffic that parted for his car the way everything parted for his money. His driver did not speak. His security did not speak. The doorman at the building nodded without words. Everyone knew better than to attempt conversation. The boardroom was already full when he arrived. His executive team sat around the long table with folders open and faces arranged in careful neutrality. They were brilliant, all of them. He had hired them because they understood that business was war and feelings were weaknesses that got you killed. Good morning. He took his seat at the head of the table without looking at anyone. Let us begin. The meeting covered the usual territory. Quarterly projections. Market analysis. The slow and steady expansion of an empire that already stretched across continents. Then his oldest friend, his CFO, the man who had been with him since the beginning when the company was 3 people in a rented office with second-hand furniture, slid a folder across the table. Community Initiative Proposals. The voice was careful, measured. We have narrowed it down to 5 consulting firms. The board wants visibility on this. Charity work. Public relations. He barely glanced at the folder. Charity work. The thing rich people did to convince themselves their money meant something beyond the numbers. Who is recommending which firm? I would suggest the Barrett Group. His friend tapped the folder. Clean, efficient, minimal oversight required. They handle everything. Set up the meetings. He leaned back in his chair. I will sit in on the presentations. Silence rippled around the table. He did not usually attend these kinds of meetings. Delegated them to people who cared about optics and handshakes and the performance of generosity. But something made him say it. Something he could not name and would not examine. All 5 firms? His friend asked. All 5. Looking back later, in the wreckage of everything that came after, he would remember this moment with painful clarity. The casual decision that changed the entire trajectory of his life. The choice that put him in that conference room at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday when the last presenter walked through the door. If he had delegated. If he had let someone else handle it. If he had done what he always did instead of showing up for something that should not have mattered. But he did not delegate. He showed up. And she walked in. The first 4 presentations blurred together. Statistics and projections. Slides with graphs that curved upward. Polished consultants in expensive suits saying exactly what they thought he wanted to hear. He sat through each one with his face arranged in professional interest while his mind wandered to numbers that actually mattered. Acquisitions pending. Markets to corner. The endless chess game of accumulating more. Then the door opened for the final presentation. And the room changed. She did not enter the way the others had. No practiced smile. No designer suit. No careful deference to the power structure she was walking into. She entered like weather. Not announced, just suddenly present and impossible to ignore. Her hair was natural, a crown of coils that caught the afternoon light streaming through the conference room windows. Her dress was simple, professional but not expensive, the kind of thing someone wore when they could not afford to perform wealth but refused to apologize for its absence. She carried a leather portfolio that had seen better days. The strap was worn soft from years of use. The corners were scuffed. And she walked with a kind of confidence that had nothing to do with designer labels or corner offices. The confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and did not need anyone else to confirm it. He sat up straighter without realizing it. Good afternoon. Her voice was warm. Rich. The kind of voice that made you lean in to hear more. I am here representing the Meridian Community Alliance. Thank you for the opportunity to present. The other executives glanced at each other. This was not what they expected. The previous presenters had brought teams, technology, the full weight of corporate machinery. This woman stood alone with a worn portfolio and no slides. She did not seem bothered. She walked to the head of the table, to the space directly across from him, and opened her portfolio. But instead of pulling out reports or projections, She pulled out a single piece of paper and slid it across the polished wood until it stopped directly in front of him. He looked down. It was a child's drawing. Crayon on construction paper. A stick figure family holding hands. A house with crooked windows. A sun with a smiling face. That was drawn by a 7-year-old named Destiny. The woman's voice had shifted. Still warm, but with an edge now. A challenge. When I asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, she said not tired. Not a doctor. Not an astronaut. Not a princess or a firefighter or anything children usually say. Just not tired. Because where she lives, exhaustion is inherited. Poverty is genetic. And hope is something that happens to other people. The room went silent. He stared at the drawing. The smiling sun. The crooked house. The stick figures reaching toward each other. Your current proposal. She straightened, meeting his eyes directly in a way that made his expensive suit feel like a costume. Is charity theater. You want to write checks and cut ribbons and pose for photographs that make you feel good about yourselves. But you do not actually want to change anything. Because real change is uncomfortable. Real change requires you to look at the destinies of the world and admit that your success and her suffering are connected. That the same systems that elevated you are the same ones crushing her. Someone coughed. His executives shifted in their seats. One of them opened his mouth to interrupt, to defend, to end this before it went further. He held up a hand. The executive went silent. She noticed the gesture. Noticed that he had silenced his own people to let her continue. Something flickered across her face. Curiosity, maybe. Or surprise. Go on. She tilted her head slightly. Your money matters less than your time. Your donations mean nothing without your attention. You can fund 100 programs you never visit, 1,000 initiatives you never see, and feel like you have made a difference. But you will not have changed anything. Because change requires showing up. And showing up requires caring about people who cannot do anything for you in return. That is not a business model. No. She gathered her portfolio, began to close it. It is just human decency. I understand if that is not what you are looking for. She turned toward the door. Every instinct told him to let her go. She had insulted him in his own building. Challenged his entire way of operating. Looked at him like she could see through every wall he had spent 30 years building. But something else, something he did not have a name for, made him speak. Miss. She stopped. Turned. Her eyes met his again, and he felt that strange shift in his chest, that unfamiliar stirring in a place he had convinced himself was dead. Leave your proposal. I will review it personally. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Studying him the way someone studies a puzzle they are not sure they want to solve. Why? Because you are the first person in this building who has told me the truth in a very long time. The words hung in the air between them. His executives stared. She stared. The afternoon light caught the edge of her profile and turned her into something from a painting he did not deserve to own. The truth is all I have. Her voice softened slightly. I cannot afford anything else. Then she nodded once, set her portfolio on the table, and walked out without looking back. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The silence that followed was deafening. You are not seriously considering her proposal. His CFO leaned forward, concern written across his face. Why not? Because she just called us complicit in systemic inequality. In our own conference room. He looked down at the crayon drawing still sitting in front of him. Little Destiny's crooked house. The smiling sun that looked down on a family that might exist only in a child's imagination. She did. He picked up the drawing carefully, like it might shatter. And she was not wrong. The next meeting, he scheduled himself. His assistant raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His CFO advised against it but did not argue. Everyone in his orbit had learned that when he made a decision, the decision was final. His office. Late afternoon. The city sprawled beyond the windows, already beginning its transition from day to night, buildings lighting up floor by floor like candles on a cake. She arrived exactly on time. Not early to impress. Not late to make a statement. Just precisely when she said she would be. She sat across from his desk like she was ready for battle. Her posture was straight but not rigid. Her eyes were clear but guarded. She held her worn portfolio in her lap and waited for him to speak first. "I read your proposal." He leaned back in his chair, watching her the way he watched competitors across negotiation tables. Looking for weakness. Looking for angle. Looking for the truth beneath the performance. "It is aggressive. Expensive. It requires far more involvement from my company than any of the other firms suggested. Is that a problem?" "No." He paused, letting the word settle. "It is refreshing." She blinked. Whatever she had been expecting, it was not that. "So you want to move forward? I want to understand what you are really after." He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city that had given him everything except the one thing that could not be bought. "Money is easy. Everyone wants money. But you are asking for something else. Time. Access. Personal commitment. Why?" She set her portfolio down. Met his eyes when he turned back to face her. "Because I have watched rich people throw money at problems my entire life. They fund programs they never visit. Schools they never set foot in. Communities they drive past with their windows rolled up. And when nothing changes, they shrug and say, well, we tried. Like that absolves them of anything." Her voice had heat now. Not anger. Exactly. Conviction. "I am not interested in helping you feel better about inequality. I am interested in actual change. And actual change requires more than your checkbook. It requires you. You do not think much of people like me. I do not know people like you." She corrected him gently. "I know the version you show the world. The suits. The titles. The press releases. But I do not know who you actually are underneath all of that." She paused. "Maybe nobody does. Maybe not even you." The words should have felt like an attack. Instead, they felt like an excavation. Like she was digging toward something he had buried so deep he had forgotten it existed. "What if I told you I came from nothing?" He heard himself speak before he could stop the words. Felt them leave his mouth like prisoners escaping a cell. "That I grew up in foster care. That I wore second-hand clothes and ate government cheese and got beaten up for being the poor kid." She did not flinch. Did not soften. Did not look at him with the pity he had spent his whole life avoiding. "I would say that makes it worse." "Excuse me. You know what it is like to be powerless. To be invisible. To be written off before you even have a chance." She stood slowly, gathering her things, her eyes never leaving his. "And you still built an empire that does the same thing to other people. That is not triumph. That is tragedy." The silence that followed was the loudest thing he had ever heard. "What do you want from me?" His voice came out quieter than he intended. Rougher. Like something inside him was cracking. She walked toward the door. Stopped with her hand on the handle. Looked back at him one final time. "I want you to remember what it felt like to be that kid. And I want you to decide if the man you have become would have helped him or walked right past." The door closed behind her. He stood alone in his office as the city lights blazed brighter and the darkness pressed against the glass walls, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something besides nothing. And it terrified him. He hired her the next morning. Told himself it was because her proposal made sense. Because the board would appreciate the optics. Because diversifying their community investment strategy was smart business. But when she walked back into his office to sign the contract, and she smiled, really smiled, like maybe she saw something in him worth believing in, he understood with perfect clarity that he had just made the most dangerous decision of his life. Not because of the money. Not because of the risk to his company's reputation. Not because of what his board might think. But because for the first time since he had learned to measure his worth in zeros, someone was asking him to measure it in something else entirely. Something real. Something human. Something that might actually matter when the lights went out and the silence closed in and all his empire could not buy him one single reason to feel alive. "Welcome aboard." He extended his hand across the desk. She took it. Her grip was firm and warm and absolutely nothing like the calculated handshakes he had exchanged 10,000 times before. "Do not make me regret this." Her eyes held his. Challenging. Curious. Something else he did not dare name. And standing there with her hand in his, he understood that it was already too late. For both of them. The work began professionally enough. Meetings about budget allocations. Site visits to community centers in neighborhoods his driver had never taken him to. Endless discussions about impact metrics and outcome measurements, and all the language of philanthropy that meant nothing until you saw a child's face light up because someone finally noticed they existed. She was brilliant at her job. Relentless in her standards. Unwilling to compromise on anything that mattered. And he found himself looking forward to their sessions in ways that had nothing to do with quarterly reports. He caught himself watching her during meetings. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about the kids they were helping. The way she stood near windows when she was thinking, letting the light fall across her face, completely unaware of how beautiful she was in those unguarded moments. She had a habit of challenging him. Not the way his executives did, with careful disagreement designed to protect their positions. She challenged him like she genuinely believed he could be better. Like his potential disappointed her more than his failures. This building is dying. She stood in the ruins of what used to be a youth center on the south side of the city. The windows were boarded up with plywood that had been tagged over so many times the graffiti formed layers like tree rings. The basketball court behind them was more weeds than concrete. The ceiling above them sagged with water damage and neglect. He looked around at the decay. Tried to see what she was seeing. It would cost a fortune to renovate. Everything worth doing cost something. She ran her hand along the wall like she was comforting an old friend. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was little. There was a woman named Miss Florence who ran programs for kids who had nowhere else to go. She taught me to read in that corner right there. She pointed toward a space now filled with broken furniture and shattered glass. Taught me that I mattered. Even when the world said I did not. Her voice softened with memory. With love for someone who had shaped her before the world tried to break her. Where is she now? Still around. Still fighting for kids who need her even though she is too old to be fighting for anything. She retired from running this place years ago, but she mentors people like me. Keeps the fire burning in the next generation. She turned to face him. She is the one who taught me that real change requires showing up. Not just signing checks. Used to say money is easy but presence is expensive. I did not understand what she meant until I got older. He looked at the ruined building around them. At the broken windows and crumbling walls and the ghosts of children who used to laugh here. His instinct was to throw money at the problem. To renovate the building and put his name on a plaque and call it good. That was what people like him did. That was how people like him measured impact. But standing there with her, watching her touch those walls with such tenderness, he understood for the first time that money was the easy part. Tell me about her. The words came out before he could stop them. About all of them. The people who made you who you are. She looked at him for a long moment. Searching for something. Testing whether he actually wanted to know or was just performing interest. Whatever she found in his face must have satisfied her. Because she nodded slowly. And then she sat down on the broken front steps of that dying building. And she began to talk. He sat beside her as the afternoon faded toward evening. As the sky turned gold and then pink and then the deep purple of approaching night. She told him about her grandmother. A woman named Ruth who had raised 2 children that were not hers because their mother could not stop loving her addictions more than she loved her kids. Ruth had worked double shifts at a hospital cafeteria. Had braided hair and checked homework and made sure there was always food on the table even when the electricity got cut off. Had taught her granddaughter that love was a choice you made every single day, not a feeling that came and went with convenience. She told him about her younger brother. A quiet boy who had grown into a protective man. Who still called her every Sunday to make sure she was okay. Who had threatened every boyfriend she had ever brought home and meant every word of it. She told him about Miss Florence. The elderly woman at the community center who had seen potential in a skinny girl nobody else noticed. Who had let her check out more books than the rules allowed. Who had told her, over and over, that her circumstances did not define her destiny. She told him about the neighborhood that raised her. The women who taught her to braid hair. The coach who pushed her to be better even when she wanted to quit. The librarian who slipped her books about worlds beyond the one she knew. What about your mother? He asked the question quietly, carefully, like approaching a wound that had never fully healed. Her expression shifted. something painful crossing her face before she smoothed it away. My mother loved her addictions more than she loved her children. She said it simply, without drama, without self-pity. That is not judgment. It is just fact. My grandmother tried to help her. Tried everything. But you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. Last I heard, she was somewhere in Florida. I stopped trying to find her when I realized she did not want to be found. I am sorry. Do not be. She turned to look at him directly. I had Ruth. I had my brother. I had Miss Florence and this place and 100 other people who showed me what real family looks like. Not blood. Choice. That is what family is. People who choose you every single day. She paused. What about you? You said foster care. But you never talk about it. He stared at the cracked basketball court. At the weeds pushing through concrete like stubborn hope. At the sun sinking below the city skyline. There is not much to say. But he said it anyway. For the first time in decades, he excavated the past he had buried and laid it at someone's feet. My mother worked herself to death trying to keep us fed. 3 jobs. I remember her hands. Always cracked. Always tired. She would come home and make me dinner even when she was so exhausted she could barely stand. He paused. Swallowed. Then one day she just did not wake up. Her heart gave out. She was 38 years old. His voice cracked on the number. I was in the system before I even understood what that meant. 7 homes before I turned 18. Some were fine. Some were not. I learned to keep my head down. Work hard. Trust nobody. Learned that showing weakness got you hurt. That is a lonely way to live. It is a safe way to live. Safe and lonely are the same thing. He looked at her then. Really looked. And felt something shift in his chest. She was watching him with those eyes that saw through every wall he had ever built. And instead of feeling exposed, instead of feeling vulnerable, he felt seen. Actually seen. For the first time since his mother died. I do not know how to do this. The confession came out rough. Unpolished. True. Do what? Be real. Be open. He shook his head. I have spent so long being the person everyone expects that I do not remember who I actually am underneath all of it. She reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm. Strong. Certain. Then maybe it is time to find out. The invitation came a week later. Sunday dinner at her grandmother's house. He tried to decline. Tried to convince himself it was too personal, too fast, too dangerous. That he should keep things professional. That he should protect himself the way he had always protected himself. But she asked again. And he said yes. Because he wanted to. Because something inside him was waking up. Because the walls he had built felt less like protection now and more like prison. He bought flowers. Stood outside his car for 5 minutes. Nervous in a way he had not been since he was a teenager trying to impress someone who would never notice him. This mattered. She mattered. And walking through that door meant admitting he wanted more than professional respect from her. Ruth's home was everything his penthouse was not. Small. Crowded. Alive. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable. The walls were covered in family photographs spanning generations. The air was thick with the smell of cooking and the sound of laughter and music playing softly from a radio in the kitchen. Her brother opened the door. Looked him up and down with exaggerated suspicion. Then grinned. So you are the rich man my sister has been complaining about. Be nice. She appeared behind her brother, wearing an apron with flour dusted across her cheek. I am being nice. I said rich man instead of what I was thinking. He found himself laughing. Actually laughing. For the first time in longer than he could remember. He handed her brother the flowers. For your grandmother. Smart man. Her brother's grin widened as he stepped aside. Come on in before Ruth starts asking if we are air conditioning the whole neighborhood. Ruth emerged from the kitchen. A small woman with steel in her spine and gentleness in her eyes. Silver hair pinned back. An apron that had seen decades of Sunday dinners. Hands that had worked hard and loved harder. She studied him for a long moment. Not his suit. Not his shoes. Not the expensive watch he suddenly wished he had left at home. His face. Like she was reading his soul. Then she nodded. You hungry, baby? Yes'm. Good. I do not trust people who do not eat. Sit yourself down. She gestured toward the dining room where the table was already crowded with more food than he had seen in years. Fried chicken. Collard greens. Cornbread. Macaroni and cheese. Sweet potato pie. Every dish made with love and time and the kind of care that could not be purchased at any price. He Saturday. He ate. He listened. Her brother told stories that made her groan and laugh in equal measure. Childhood embarrassments. Teenage disasters. The time she tried to cook for the first time and nearly burned down the kitchen. Ruth asked questions that seemed innocent but cut straight to the truth. Not about his money or his company. About his character. What made him angry? What made him laugh? What he did when nobody was watching? And he answered honestly. Told them about the foster homes. About his mother's hands. About the loneliness that had driven him to build walls so high even he could not see over them anymore. When he finished, Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and patted his hand. That is real sad, baby. But it is not an excuse. Everybody got pain. Question is what you do with it. Build bridges or build walls. I am trying to learn the difference. Good. Ruth's eyes flickered to her granddaughter, then back to him. My grandbaby does not have patience for people who choose walls. You want to be in her life, you better be ready to tear some of those walls down. Yes'm. After dinner, he helped clear the table despite protests. Washed dishes alongside her brother while she and Ruth packed up leftovers. The kitchen was small. The sink was old. The whole scene was so ordinary, so normal, so completely unlike anything in his life. And it felt more real than anything he had experienced in decades. She likes you. Her brother spoke quietly while handing him a plate to dry. Really likes you. Do not make me regret not threatening you. I will not. See that you do not. Her brother turned to face him directly. Because she has had enough people disappoint her. She deserves someone who shows up. Actually shows up. Not someone who runs when things get hard. I understand. Do you? Her brother's eyes held his. Searching for truth. Testing for weakness. Because everybody says they understand until they are tested. And then you find out who they really are. He did not look away. I know. And I cannot promise I will not make mistakes. But I can promise I will try. Every single day. I will try. Her brother studied him for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. Good enough. For now. She walked him to his car after dinner. The night sky was clear. Stars visible even through the city's light pollution. The neighborhood was quiet except for distant music from a party a few blocks away. This is my family. She stopped beside his car, turned to face him. Not perfect, but real. And if you are going to be in my life, you need to understand what that means. What does it mean? It means we show up. We tell the truth. We do not run when things get hard. She searched his face. Can you do that? He looked back at the little house with its warm lights and loud laughter. At the life she had built from struggle and love and the refusal to become bitter. Then he looked at her, standing in front of him with hope and fear warring in her eyes. Offering him something he had convinced himself did not exist. I want to try. She kissed him then. Soft. Sudden. Absolutely right. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. Then try. The trying was terrifying and beautiful. He started letting his walls down piece by piece. Told her things he had never told anyone. About the foster father who locked him in closets when he misbehaved. About the caseworker who forgot his birthday 3 years in a row. About lying awake at night as a child, wondering if anyone would notice if he simply disappeared. She listened without pity. Without trying to fix him. Just holding his hand while he excavated pain he had buried for 30 years. And in return, she showed him her scars. The mother who had missed every birthday after she turned 7. The kids at school who mocked her second-hand clothes. The boyfriend in college who promised to love her forever and left when she would not compromise her integrity for his convenience. They fell into patterns that felt like breathing. Wednesday dinners at Ruth's house. Weekend mornings at the farmer's market, where she introduced him to vendors she had known since childhood. Late nights on his balcony, talking until the sun came up, discovering each other in the small moments that mattered more than grand gestures. He learned that she sang in the shower but only when she thought no one could hear. That she cried at commercials but stayed stoic through horror movies. That she kept a journal she had been writing in since she was 10, filling pages with dreams and fears she had never spoken out loud. She learned that he was afraid of the dark but would never admit it. That he had memorized poetry in foster care because words were the only things no one could take from him. That he wanted children desperately but was terrified he would fail them the way he had been failed. "I do not fall easily," she told him one night, lying in his arms while the city lights glittered below them like fallen stars. "But I fall completely. If you are not sure about this, about us, tell me now. Because once I give you my heart, I will not know how to take it back." He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "I am sure. More sure than I have been about anything in my entire life. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if you ever stop being sure, you will tell me. Do not let me believe in something that is not real. I have had enough of that in my life." He pulled her closer, held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had never stopped shifting beneath his feet. "I promise. I will never lie to you. Not about this. Not about us. Not about anything that matters." Months passed like a dream. They worked together, building programs that actually helped instead of just looking good in press releases. They laughed together over terrible movies and arguments about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They grew together, becoming people they had both forgotten they could be. He started keeping a plant alive for the first time in his life. Started remembering to call Ruth on Sundays. Started understanding that love was not a weakness to be managed but a strength to be cultivated. She started trusting again. Started believing that maybe not everyone would leave when things got difficult. Started imagining a future that included more than just her work and her family. And then, one evening in Ruth's kitchen after another Sunday dinner, he got down on one knee. "I know I am not good at this." His voice shook. The ring box trembled in his hand. Her brother stood in the doorway, trying and failing to look stern. Ruth watched from beside the stove, a dish towel pressed to her mouth. "I know I am still learning how to be real. How to be vulnerable. How to be someone worthy of you. But you make me want to try. Every single day, you make me want to be better. Not for success or money or any of the things I used to think mattered. Just better. More human. More real." He looked up at her. At the tears streaming down her face. At the smile breaking through despite them. "Marry me. Build a life with me. Teach me what love actually means." She pulled him to his feet. Kissed him so hard he forgot his own name. Yes, yes. 1,000 times yes. They married quickly, quietly, in Ruth's backyard on a warm evening with fireflies dancing in the purple dusk. She wore a simple dress that made her look like something from a dream. He could not stop crying during his vows. Could not stop smiling. Could not stop feeling like he had finally found home. No media circus. No society pages. No performance for people who did not matter. Just love. Truth. The promise of building something real together. "I choose you," she said during her vows, her hands in his, her eyes holding his across the small space between them. "Every single day for the rest of our days, I choose you. Your scars and your fears and your terrible singing voice. All of it. Always. I choose you." He echoed, his voice breaking on words that meant more than any contract he had ever signed. "And I promise to keep choosing you. Even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard." Miss Florence gave the blessing. Her voice steady and strong despite her age. Her words carrying the weight of decades of watching love succeed and fail. Love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone real and choosing them anyway. These two beautiful souls have found that. May they cherish it. May they fight for it. May they never take it for granted. He moved her into the penthouse, though she immediately started making it feel like a home. Plants appeared on the windowsills. Photographs covered the sterile walls. Their wedding. Ruth's Sunday dinners. Candid moments of joy that he had not known were being captured. The cold monument to his success became warm with her presence. The silence that used to press against his ears was replaced by her laughter, her voice, the simple sounds of someone else existing in his space. "I love you," he told her on their wedding night, meaning it with everything he had. "I love you too." She curled into him, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart. "Do not forget that. Even when things get hard. Especially when things get hard. I will not." He kissed the top of her head. "I promise." But promises made in joy are easy. It is the promises tested by fear that reveal who we really are. And he did not know it yet. Could not possibly know it yet. But his fear was coming. Rising from the depths of everything he thought he had overcome. Preparing to destroy everything he had built. And when it arrived, he would discover that the walls he thought he had torn down were still standing. Just waiting for the right moment to close in around him. And crush everything he loved. The crisis arrived without warning. One morning the world was whole. By afternoon, it was shattered. He was in the car on his way to the office when his phone started buzzing. Not the usual rhythm of business. Something urgent. Something wrong. By the time he reached the building, the lobby was chaos. Security moving with purpose. Executives gathered in clusters, speaking in low, urgent voices. Everyone looking at him with expressions that ranged from concern to accusation. What happened? His CFO met him at the elevator. Face grim. Voice careful. There has been a breach. Confidential merger documents leaked to the press. Strategic acquisitions. Proprietary market analysis. Everything. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. The doors closed. How bad? Bad. Millions gone already. Investors panicking. The board is calling an emergency meeting in 20 minutes. His mind raced through possibilities. Competitors. Hackers. Disgruntled employees. 100 potential sources for a leak this devastating. Do we know how it happened? His CFO hesitated. Just for a moment. But he noticed. We traced the access logs. The files were opened from a credentialed account during non-business hours. Someone with high-level clearance. Who? His CFO did not answer immediately. The elevator rose floor after floor. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Who? The access codes trace back to your wife's login credentials. The words did not make sense. He heard them, processed them, rejected them. That is impossible. I know you do not want to believe it. But look at the timestamps. Late nights when she was supposedly working on community projects. Files accessed that had nothing to do with her work. She had no legitimate reason to be in these systems. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto the executive floor. He did not move. There has to be an explanation. I hope there is. His CFO's voice was gentle. Almost sympathetic. But right now, the board wants answers. And they want whoever did this gone. The boardroom was already full when he walked in. His executive team. Legal counsel. Representatives from the board. All of them watching him with expressions that mixed concern with calculation. He took his seat at the head of the table. The seat where he had always felt powerful. The seat that now felt like a trap. We need to act decisively. The CFO spoke first. Voice measured. Professional. If this was an internal breach, we terminate immediately and pursue legal action. We cannot afford to appear weak. The markets are already reacting. She is my wife. The words came out before he could stop them. Before he could arrange his face into professional neutrality. Which makes it worse. Someone else spoke. A board member. A man he had known for years. The optics alone could destroy us. You need to distance yourself from this situation immediately. The meeting continued. Voices layering over voices. Evidence presented. Timelines constructed. Every piece of data pointing at the woman he loved. And the voice in his head, the one that had kept him alive through foster care and poverty and every betrayal life had thrown at him, started whispering. What if she played you from the beginning? What if this was always the plan? What if you were stupid enough to believe someone could actually love you? Bring her in. He heard himself say the words. Felt them leave his mouth like stones dropping into still water. I need to hear it from her. She arrived within the hour. He watched her walk into his office. The office where they had signed her contract. Where they had built something together. Where he had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was not destined to be alone. She looked concerned. Worried about him. Not knowing that she was walking into an ambush. What is wrong? Your assistant would not tell me anything. She said it was urgent. He stood behind his desk. Could not make himself come around to her side. Could not make himself close the distance between them. There has been a security breach. Confidential files leaked to the press. The access traces back to your credentials. He watched her face change. First confusion. Then understanding. Then something that looked like heartbreak. You think I did this? I do not know what to think. The evidence. The timestamps. The evidence is wrong. Her voice was firm. Certain. The voice of someone telling the truth. I have never accessed anything outside my project files. I would not even know where to find the kind of documents you are talking about. Then how did someone use your credentials? I do not know. Maybe someone stole them. Maybe the system was hacked. Maybe. She stopped. Her eyes searched his face. And he watched understanding dawn in them like a terrible sunrise. You have already decided. Have you not? I have not decided anything. You called me in here. Not our home. Your office. You are standing behind your desk like I am a threat. You cannot even look at me. Her voice rose. Not screaming. Something worse. The controlled fury of someone watching their world burn. I am your wife. Your wife. And you are looking at me like I am the enemy. This is not about us. This is about my company. Everything is about us. She stepped closer. He stepped back. She noticed. He saw her notice. And something in her expression shattered. We made vows. We promised to trust each other. To believe in each other. To be partners. And the first time something tests that, you default back to the person you were before. The person who trusts nobody. The person who would rather believe evidence on a screen than the woman standing in front of him. You have access. The timeline fits. The board wants answers. And what do you want? She stepped closer again. This time he held his ground, but only because his back was against the window. Do you want the truth? Or do you want an excuse to run? Before this gets any more real. Before our life together becomes something you cannot control. That is not fair. None of this is fair. Her voice cracked. Finally cracked. The composure she had been holding together splintering at the edges. I gave you everything. I married you. I trusted you with my whole heart. And the first time something tests that trust, you hide behind your desk and look at me like I am the enemy. The evidence. Damn the evidence. Her voice rose to something close to a shout before she pulled it back down. I am standing right here. Looking you in the eye. Telling you I did not do this. Your wife is telling you the truth. Does that matter? Do I matter? Or is your empire more important than our marriage? The silence that followed was suffocating. He wanted to believe her. God. He wanted to believe her with everything he had. But the data was there. The timestamps were there. The pressure was mounting. And that voice in his head kept asking, what if she is lying? What if you are the fool? What if you are about to lose everything because you were stupid enough to fall in love? In her purse, her phone vibrated. A calendar reminder. The doctor's appointment she had scheduled for later in the week. The appointment where she was going to confirm what she already suspected. She was pregnant. Twins. She had been waiting for the perfect moment to tell him. Had imagined his face when he found out. Had dreamed of building a family with the man she had married. But he would never know about that appointment. Would never know what she had been planning to share. would never know that in her purse, tucked in a small envelope, was an ultrasound picture she had been carrying for days. Waiting for the right moment. A moment that would never come. "I need you to leave." His voice was quiet. Final. The voice of a man choosing his empire over everything else. "What? Pending the investigation, you need to surrender your access credentials and... You are firing me. I am protecting my company. You are destroying our marriage." Her voice was barely a whisper now. All the fight draining out of her. She stood there looking at him. Really looking at him. Like she was memorizing his face. Like she was saying goodbye to someone she thought she knew. "I knew you would break." The words hit him like a slap. "I knew it. But I married you anyway. And that is on me." Something inside him, something scared and desperate and convinced that attack was the only defense, said the cruelest thing he could find. "This marriage is over. I want a divorce. My lawyers will contact you." Something died in her eyes. Not love. That would have been merciful. Hope. The hope that he could become someone different. The hope that he was capable of choosing love over fear. The hope she had carried against all evidence that the man she married was real. She did not scream. Did not beg. Did not cry. Just stood there for a long moment. Her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach. A protective gesture he was too blind to see. Too scared to notice. Then she walked toward the door. Wait. The word escaped him without permission. A last gasp of the man he could have been. She stopped. Looked back. And the expression on her face was something he would carry for the rest of his life. Not anger. Not hatred. Resignation. Like she had hoped for better but expected exactly this. "Goodbye. I hope your empire keeps you warm at night." The door closed behind her with a soft click. He stood alone in his office. Surrounded by everything he had built. Everything he had protected. Everything that suddenly felt like absolutely nothing at all. The silence that followed was the loudest sound he had ever heard. She made it to the parking garage before the shaking started. She sat in her car with her hands gripping the steering wheel. The ultrasound picture burning a hole in her purse. The future she had imagined crumbling into dust around her. Twins. She was carrying his children. Their children. She had been planning to tell him that weekend. Had imagined making a special dinner. Lighting candles. Watching his face transform from confusion to joy. And instead he had looked at her like she was a stranger. Like their vows meant nothing. Like love was just another liability to be cut when things got complicated. Her phone buzzed. Her brother calling. Then her grandmother. Text messages from Miss Florence, who somehow always knew when something was wrong. Everyone who loved her reaching out. Sensing the disaster from across the city. But she could not talk to any of them. Could not form words yet. Could not explain that her husband had just destroyed their marriage because he was too damaged to believe in her. Her hand moved to her stomach. Protective. Fierce. She made her decision in that parking garage. With her hands shaking and her heart broken and 2 tiny lives growing inside her. She would not tell him about the babies. Would not give him the chance to doubt them too. Would not let his fear poison the only pure thing left from their marriage. These children would be hers. Only hers. Raised in truth and love and the certainty that they mattered. Not because of their father's money or their mother's pain. But simply because they existed. She would protect them from him. From his walls and his fear and his terrible destructive need to push away anything that made him vulnerable. He would never know what he had lost. Never know he had destroyed his family while she was carrying his children. Never know that the worst thing he had ever done was not just betraying her trust. It was orphaning his daughters before they were even born. She started the car. Pulled out of the parking garage. Drove toward a future he would never be part of. And she did not look back. The truth came out 3 months later. His CFO. His oldest friend. The man who had been with him since the beginning. Arrested in the lobby of the building they had built together. Handcuffs catching the morning light. Face blank with the resignation of someone who knew the game was finally over. Embezzlement. Corporate espionage. Selling secrets to competitors for years. The leaked documents were just the final move. The desperate act of a man who knew the walls were closing in. He had used her credentials, planted the evidence, whispered suspicions into ears already primed for betrayal. And he had believed him. The investigators laid it out in excruciating detail. The timestamps did not match her actual locations. She had been at community center events when the files were accessed. The patterns were wrong. Someone had logged in using her credentials from a device that was not hers. A forensic audit showed the real culprit had been stealing for months, covering his tracks by pointing fingers elsewhere, using the paranoia of a broken man to destroy an innocent woman. Everything he had believed was a lie. Except her. She had been telling the truth. And he had thrown her away. He stood in the same office where he had accused her, stared at the reports that proved her innocence, and felt his soul crack open. He had done this. Not his friend. Not the evidence. Not the pressure. Him. He had looked into his wife's eyes. The eyes of the woman who loved him. The eyes of the woman carrying his children, though he did not know that yet. And he had chosen to believe the worst. Because believing the best required a courage he did not have. The divorce papers arrived a week later, filed from a lawyer in a city he had never been to, on behalf of a woman who had not included a return address. She asked for nothing, wanted nothing, just her freedom. He signed the papers with shaking hands, knowing he deserved this, knowing it was the consequence of his fear, knowing that all the money in the world could not undo what he had done. And then he tried to find her, called her number, disconnected, went to the penthouse they had shared, empty, her things gone like she had never existed, contacted her family, no response. Her grandmother's house sat quiet. Her brother would not return his calls. He hired investigators, the best money could buy. They came back empty-handed. She had closed all her social media, terminated her email, ended every contract and connection. She had erased herself from his world completely, efficiently, like she had never existed at all. No one would tell him where she had gone. He found Miss Florence at the old community center, the one they had been planning to rebuild together, the one where she had learned to read in a corner that no longer existed. Please, tell me where she is. I need to apologize. I need her to know I was wrong. Miss Florence studied him with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. She came by here one last time before she left. Said she needed to heal somewhere you would never think to look. Somewhere she could rebuild without ghosts. Where? Did she say where? No. And I would not tell you if she had. Miss Florence stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. What did you do to that girl? I did not believe her when she needed me to. I chose my fear over our marriage. I said things that cannot be unsaid. Then maybe you should not be looking for her. Maybe the kindest thing you can do is let her heal in peace. She gave you her whole heart and you crushed it. She does not owe you forgiveness. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. But I love her. Then prove it by letting her go. By becoming someone worthy of the love she gave you. Even if she never sees it. Do the work. Not to win her back, but because it is right. Miss Florence walked away. Left him standing in front of a dying building that had once meant hope. 2 years passed. 2 years of searching. Of regretting. Of waking up at night with her voice in his head saying I knew you would break. He never stopped looking. Never stopped failing to find her. He sold the penthouse. Moved into a modest apartment in a neighborhood where people actually knew each other's names. Started showing up for foster kids who reminded him of himself. Started funding programs without attaching his name. He found a therapist. A real one. Not the executive coach he had used before. Someone who specialized in trauma. In foster care survivors. In people who had built walls so high they had forgotten what it felt like to be human. Tell me about the first time you felt abandoned. He sat in the comfortable chair in her modest office and felt 30 years of armor start to crack. My mother. When she died. I was in school when they told me. They pulled me out of class and I knew. Somehow I knew before they said anything. What did that teach you about love? That it leaves. That if you need someone, they disappear. That the only safe thing is to need nobody. And your wife. Did she leave? I made her leave. I accused her of something she did not do. I chose my fear over her truth. Why? Because love required trust. And trust required vulnerability. And vulnerability felt like dying. The sessions were brutal. Necessary. He cried in that office more than he had cried in his entire adult life. Cried for the mother who had worked herself to death. For the scared kid who had learned all the wrong lessons. For the woman who had loved him and trusted him and been destroyed by his inability to do the same. He did not know about the twins yet. Did not know that somewhere in the world, 2 little girls were taking their first steps without him. Speaking their first words without him. Growing into people he would never know. But he worked on himself anyway. Not for redemption. Not for the hope of winning her back. Because Miss Florence was right. The only way forward was becoming someone worthy of the love he had destroyed. Even if he never got the chance to prove it. He started volunteering at a community center across town. Away from anywhere she might be. Away from any place that felt like chasing her. A woman named Keisha ran the center. Tired. Underfunded. Fighting a war nobody else seemed to notice. What do you need? Tutors. People to help kids aging out of foster care. Resume writing. Interview skills. Basic life stuff the system does not teach. She looked him up and down. You good with kids? I do not know. But I used to be one. Maybe that counts for something. He showed up every Tuesday evening. Every Saturday morning. Not for photo opportunities. Not for tax deductions. Just to be present. A kid named Marcus reminded him painfully of himself. Sharp and scared. Carrying trauma like armor. Pushing everyone away before they could leave. Why do you do this? Marcus asked one evening while they worked on college applications. Because someone should have been here for me when I was your age. Since they were not, maybe I can be here for you. That is corny. It is. But it is also true. Marcus studied him. You really get it. Most people just feel sorry for us. I do not feel sorry for you. I am angry on your behalf. There is a difference. Months turned into a year. The year turned into 2. He changed. Not performing change. Actually becoming someone different. The plant in his apartment survived. He remembered birthdays. He called Ruth on Sundays even though she never answered. Left voicemails anyway. Apologizing. Explaining. Hoping she might eventually hear. Articles appeared about his work. The former CEO who had stepped back from his empire to focus on community development. The programs he funded that actually helped. The kids whose lives had changed because someone finally showed up. He never mentioned her in interviews. Never used his pain for sympathy. Never exploited their story for anything. The work was the point. Not the credit. And he thought about her constantly. Wondered what she was doing. Whether she had found peace. Whether she was happy. Hoped she was. Genuinely hoped it. Even if that happiness did not include him. He never imagined he would see her again. Until one ordinary autumn afternoon, cutting through a park on his way somewhere forgettable, he heard a laugh that stopped his heart. And there she was. The park was nothing special. Trees shedding leaves. Children on playground equipment. Families scattered across the grass enjoying the mild weather. He had cut through it 100 times. Had never really looked at the people around him. Had been too lost in his own thoughts. His own guilt. His own endless inventory of regret. But that laugh was her. He turned before his brain could process why. Felt his body respond to a sound it would recognize in any crowd. In any city. Across any distance. And there she was. Older. Changed in ways he could not name. Her hair was longer now. Natural and wild and catching the afternoon light the way it had the first time she walked into his conference room. She wore jeans and a comfortable sweater. Nothing like the professional clothes she had worn when they worked together. Nothing like the simple dress she had worn on their wedding day. She looked happy. Really happy. The kind of happy that comes from building something real. From healing. From moving on. But that was not what stopped his heart. Two little girls held her hands. Toddlers with matching braids and bright jackets. Their faces round with baby fat. Their giggles infectious and pure. They were pulling at her, begging to be spun, and she obliged with theatrical flair while they shrieked with delight. He could not move. Could not breathe. Could only stare at those little faces with the terrible dawning recognition of someone watching his entire life reshape itself. One of them scrunched her nose when she laughed. The exact gesture he made. The other tilted her head while watching her sister. His grandmother used to do that. He did it too, unconsciously, when he was trying to figure something out. They had her eyes. Her smile. The shape of her face. But something else too. Something that looked like him. The angle of their jaws. The curve of their brows. The way one of them stood with her weight on one foot. Exactly the way he stood when he was thinking. Twins. He had twin daughters. The word echoed in his mind. Foreign and familiar. Devastating and beautiful. Daughters. Two little girls who existed in the world. Breathing and laughing and living. Completely unaware that their father was standing frozen 30 feet away, watching his entire existence collapse and rebuild around their existence. She looked up. Their eyes met across the park. Across the autumn leaves. Across 2 years of absence and accusation and everything that could never be taken back. The color drained from her face. He saw panic flash in her eyes. Saw her arms instinctively pull the girls closer. Saw her body tense like an animal preparing for attack or flight. She was afraid of him. Not angry. Afraid. Afraid he would disrupt their lives. Claim them. Demand something he had no right to demand. Afraid he would destroy them the way he had destroyed her. His feet moved without permission. Each step felt like walking through concrete. His heart pounding so loud he could hear it in his ears. The distance between them closing slowly. Too slowly. Forever. The girls looked up at their mother, confused by the sudden tension. Mommy. One of them tugged at her hand. Mommy, who is that man? Why is he looking at us like that? Nobody, baby. Her voice was strained. Forced calm for the children. Just someone Mommy used to know. Nobody. He was nobody to his daughters. A stranger. Someone Mommy used to know. Past tense. Irrelevant. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough to see their faces clearly. Close enough to catalogue every feature. Close enough to memorize them before she took them away again. Please. Her voice was low. Trembling. Not here. Not now. Are they? He could not finish the question. Could not form the words that would confirm everything he had lost. They are mine. Her voice hardened. Steel wrapped in silk. That is all you need to know. But he saw the truth in her eyes. Saw the confirmation she would not speak. Saw 2 years of absence crystallize into devastating clarity. He had not just destroyed his marriage. He had orphaned his children before they were even born. Mommy, I want to go play. One of the girls was getting restless. Bored by the adult tension she did not understand. We are leaving now, baby. She started to turn away. To take them with her. To disappear again. Please. The word came out broken. Desperate. Just tell me. Just let me know. Know what? She stopped. Looked back at him with an expression that could have frozen fire. That I threw away my family. That I have daughters I have never met. That while I was signing divorce papers and feeling sorry for myself, you were pregnant with my children and building a life without me. The silence that followed was endless. One of the girls looked up at him with curious, innocent eyes. Mommy, is that man sad? He looks sad. Something flickered across her face. Pain. Memory. The ghost of the love she had once felt for him. Yes, baby. He is sad. Then she looked at him one final time. They are mine. I carried them alone. I gave birth alone. I have raised them alone. You were not there for any of it. You do not get to show up now and claim something you abandoned before it even existed. I did not know. You did not care enough to believe me when it mattered. That is worse. She gathered the girls. Started walking away. They are beautiful. He called after her. Voice cracking. I can see you in them. In the way they smile. In the way they tilt their heads when they are curious. You have given them so much. She stopped. Did not turn around. I have given them everything. And that includes protection from people who cannot be trusted. Can I? Can I ever? No. The word was final. Absolute. Do not follow us. Do not try to find out where we live. Do not appear in our lives again. You lost the right to know them when you looked at their mother and chose suspicion over trust. She walked away. The girls walked with her. One of them glanced back over her shoulder. Waved at the strange sad man in the park. He stood frozen until they disappeared. Until the autumn leaves swallowed them up. Until the playground sounds returned to normal and the world continued spinning as if nothing had happened. As if he had not just discovered and lost his daughters in the same moment. That night, alone in his apartment, he sat on the floor with his back against the wall and finally understood the true cost of his fear. He had not just lost the woman he loved. He had lost 2 daughters he never knew existed. He had orphaned his children before they were born. And no amount of money, no amount of success, no amount of redemption could ever undo that. He cried until he could not breathe. Until his chest ached. Until the walls of his modest apartment absorbed the sound of a broken man finally understanding what he had destroyed. Everything. He had destroyed everything. The months that followed were the hardest of his life. He did not chase her. Did not hire investigators. Did not show up uninvited demanding access to children who did not know he existed. He wrote letters instead. Sent them to the lawyer who had handled the divorce. Asked only that they be delivered. They came back unopened. Every single one. He left voicemails for her grandmother. Her brother. Miss Florence. No one responded. He went back to therapy. Doubled down on the work. Tried to become someone worthy of the family he had thrown away. Even if they never knew he was trying. Even if they never gave him the chance to prove it. I have daughters. He told his therapist one afternoon. Voice hollow. I know. You told me. No. I mean. I really have daughters. I saw them. 2 little girls. They look like me. They look like her. They exist in the world and they do not know I am their father. How does that feel? Like dying. Like being born. Like everything I thought I knew about loss was nothing compared to this. What do you want to do? I want to fix it. I want to show up. I want to be their father. He paused. But she told me to stay away. Said they need protection from me. Said I lost the right to know them. Do you believe that? I believe I hurt her so badly that she cannot see me as anything other than a threat. I believe the man I was does not deserve to be their father. I believe. His voice broke. I believe the kindest thing I can do is become someone different. Someone she might eventually trust. Even if that takes years. Even if it takes forever. Even if it never happens at all. And if it never happens, then at least I will have become someone who would not have made the choices I made. Someone who deserved them. Even if I never got them back. A year passed. Then another. The community center work expanded. Kids he had mentored went to college. Aged out of foster care into actual lives instead of statistics. Came back to help the next generation. He kept a plant alive. Then 2. Then a small garden on his balcony that he tended every morning before the sun came up. He learned to cook. Really cook. The way Ruth used to. Sunday dinners for the kids at the center who had nowhere else to go. He dated, briefly, women who were kind and beautiful and completely wrong for him. He told them the truth on the first date. About who he had been. What he had done. Why he was not looking for anything serious. Most of them appreciated the honesty. None of them stayed. He did not blame them. News of her reached him sometimes. Through professional circles. through the community work that occasionally overlapped. She had started a foundation, named it after Miss Florence, helped hundreds of kids transition out of foster care, built something beautiful from the ruins he had left behind. He was proud of her, genuinely proud, even though the pride came with grief so heavy it sometimes made it hard to breathe. And he thought about his daughters constantly, wondered what they liked to eat, what made them laugh, whether they were afraid of the dark like he had been, whether they asked about their father, what their mother told them if they did. He hoped they were happy, hoped she was happy, hoped that somewhere in the world, his girls were growing up surrounded by the kind of love he had been too broken to give. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, a hospital fundraiser honoring community leaders. She was receiving an award for her foundation's work. His initiative was listed as a donor. He had approved the contribution months ago, had not looked at which event it was for. Miss Florence called him. The first time anyone from that world had reached out in 3 years. You know about the gala? I know. She is being honored. Your initiative is listed as a sponsor. I know. Long pause. Are you going to attend? Should I? I am telling you about it so you can decide. Not to chase her. Not to demand anything. Just to witness what she has built. You owe her that much. What if seeing me hurts her? What if not showing up suggests you do not care about her accomplishments? He was quiet for a long moment. You are right. I should go. For her. Not for me. Good. And keep doing the work. Whether she ever sees it or not. I will. Thank you, Miss Florence. Keep my name out your mouth until you have earned the right to use it. The line went dead. He smiled despite himself. Some things never changed. The night of the gala arrived with a storm. Rain fell in sheets against the hotel windows. Thunder rolled in the distance like a drumbeat. Lightning flickered across the sky, turning the city into something electric and dangerous. He stood in the back of the ballroom, away from the spotlight tables, away from the donors and executives who would have welcomed him at the front of the room. He had not come for recognition. He had come to witness. She took the stage looking like everything he had lost and everything he would never deserve. Her dress was blue, the color of the ocean at dusk. Her hair was natural and crowned and caught the stage lights like a halo. She stood at the podium with the confidence of someone who had survived the worst and emerged stronger. The audience quieted, and she began to speak. Every child deserves to know they matter. Her voice filled the room, warm and powerful and achingly familiar. Not because of where they came from, or who their parents are. Not because they are perfect or easy or convenient, but simply because they exist. Because they are human. Because showing up for them might be the difference between a life lived and a life survived. She told stories. Kids her foundation had helped. A girl who aged out of foster care and was now in medical school. A boy who had been written off as a lost cause and was now mentoring younger kids. Siblings who had been separated and were now reunited. The audience was captivated, moved. Some of them were crying. He was crying too, standing in the shadows at the back of the room, tears streaming down his face, watching the woman he had destroyed create something beautiful from the ashes. She did not mention him, did not acknowledge his contribution, did not even glance toward the back of the room where he stood invisible and irrelevant. And he was grateful. This was her night, her accomplishment, her triumph over everything he had put her through. He was just a witness, nothing more. The applause was thunderous when she finished. A standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. She smiled and nodded and accepted the recognition with grace. Then she left the stage and the crowd swallowed her up. He should have left then. Should have slipped out the back and returned to his quiet life. Should have been satisfied with witnessing from a distance. But something pulled him toward the balcony doors. Something he could not name and did not try to fight. The rain had eased. The storm was passing. The balcony was empty except for the wet chairs and the city lights blurred by water on glass. He stepped outside. Let the cool air fill his lungs. Let the distant thunder echo the pounding of his heart. The door opened behind him. He did not have to turn around to know who it was. Her voice cut through the night air like lightning. "I saw you in the back of the room." He turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, still in that blue dress, her face unreadable. "I did not want to intrude." "Then why did you come?" "Because you deserved to be celebrated. Because your work matters more than anything I have ever built. Because I wanted to witness what you accomplished. Even from a distance. Even knowing I am not part of it." She stepped onto the balcony, let the door close behind her, stood several feet away with the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "I read the articles about your work. The community centers. The foster programs. I am trying to be better." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. "Because you were right about everything. About who I should have been. About what actually matters." He paused. "And because somewhere in this city, I have 2 daughters who deserve a father who would not have made the choices I made. Even if I never get to be that father. Even if they never know I exist. I want to be someone they would have been proud of." Something shifted in her expression. The hardness softening slightly. The walls lowering just enough for him to glimpse the woman she had been before he broke her. "They ask about you sometimes." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. "Their father. They ask where he is." "What do you tell them?" "That you did not know about them when they were born. That you made a mistake. That sometimes people are not ready for love even when it is right in front of them. That is more grace than I deserve." "I know." She walked to the railing, looked out at the city, at the storm clouds breaking apart to reveal stars. "I hated you for a long time. Hated you for what you did to me. Hated you for what you cost our daughters. Hated you for being exactly the person I was afraid you would be." He stood beside her, not too close, respecting the distance she needed. "And now I am tired. Tired of carrying the anger. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of letting what you did define who I am." She turned to face him. "I have built a beautiful life. Our daughters are happy. They are loved. They have everything they need. And none of that includes you. I know. So if we are going to talk, if there is ever going to be anything between us besides silence, it will not be about fixing what you broke. It will be about what is real now. What is true now. Who you have actually become." "I understand." "Do you?" Her eyes searched his face, looking for the man she had married, looking for the man who had destroyed her, trying to figure out which one was standing in front of her now. "I spent 2 years becoming someone different. Not because I thought it would bring you back. Not because I thought I could earn your forgiveness. But because the man I was should not have existed. Because those kids I mentor deserve someone who actually shows up. Because..." His voice broke. "Because becoming better is the only way I can live with what I did." The silence that followed was not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Not the beginning of something new. It was acknowledgement. The raw recognition that they had both been broken by what happened. That the damage could not be undone. But that maybe, just maybe, they could stop letting it define everything that came after. "Our daughters have names." Her voice was soft now, almost gentle. "They have birthdays. Favorite foods. Things that make them laugh. They are becoming people. Real people with personalities and dreams and fears. I would give anything to know them. I know you would. And maybe someday, when they are older, when I am sure that this version of you is real and permanent, when I can trust that you will not hurt them the way you hurt me." She paused. "Maybe someday we can talk about what that might look like." The words hit him like salvation. "That is more than I ever hoped for. It is not a promise. Just possibility. Possibility is everything." They stood in silence as the storm cleared completely, as the stars emerged one by one, as the city lights glittered below them like fallen hopes. "What are their names?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she answered. "The one who tilts her head like you do. She is called Hope. Because that is what I felt when I found out I was pregnant with her. Even after everything. Even in the middle of the worst pain of my life. I felt hope. And the other one. The one who scrunches her nose when she laughs. She is called Grace. Because that is what it took to raise them alone. Grace I did not know I had. Hope and Grace. He repeated the names like prayers. Like promises. Like the most beautiful words he had ever heard. Thank you. For telling me. For giving them those names. For being the mother I knew you would be. I should get back inside. People are waiting. She started toward the door. Then stopped. Looked back. Take care of yourself. Actually take care. You look like you have been carrying too much for too long. You too. You deserve all the recognition they gave you tonight. And more. She smiled. Just slightly. The first real smile she had given him in 3 years. Goodbye for now. The door closed behind her. He stood alone on the balcony. Rain still dripping from the eaves. Stars still emerging from the breaking clouds. The sound of the gala filtering through the glass like music from another world. He had daughters. Hope and Grace. He did not know when he would see them again. Did not know if she would ever truly forgive him. Did not know what the future held. But he knew something had shifted tonight. Not reconciliation. Not forgiveness. Not a second chance. Just possibility. And for a man who had spent his whole life convinced that love was just another word for loss, possibility felt like the beginning of something he had never dared to believe in. Redemption. The next morning, he woke up early. Watered his plants. Made coffee. Sat by the window and watched the sun rise over a city that suddenly felt different. He did not know what would happen next. Did not know if she would reach out. Did not know when he might see his daughters again or what that would look like if he did. But for the first time in years, the uncertainty did not feel like terror. It felt like hope. He got dressed. Went to the community center. Helped Marcus with a scholarship application. Listened to another kid talk about dreams that seemed impossible. Made himself useful in the small ways that added up to something real. At the end of the day, he walked home through the same park where he had first seen his daughters. The playground was empty now. The swings moving slightly in the evening breeze. The autumn leaves scattered across the ground like confetti from a celebration he had not been invited to. He sat on a bench. Watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. And he thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a scared foster kid who learned that love meant loss. To a powerful man who built walls so high he forgot there was anything on the other side. To a husband who destroyed his marriage because trust felt more dangerous than betrayal. To a father who missed the first 3 years of his daughters' lives because he chose fear over faith. And finally, to this. A man sitting on a park bench. Watching the sunset. Hoping for something he had not earned and might never receive. But trying anyway. Some stories end with happily ever after. Some stories end with tragedy. This story ended with something in between. A man who had lost everything and was slowly learning to live with that loss. A woman who had been broken and had rebuilt herself stronger. 2 little girls named Hope and Grace who would grow up knowing they were loved. And maybe someday. A conversation that led to another. A visit that led to more. A relationship built not on the ashes of what was destroyed but on the foundation of who they had both become. Or maybe not. Maybe the distance would remain. Maybe forgiveness would never come. Maybe Hope and Grace would grow up knowing their father only as a story their mother told. A cautionary tale about what happens when fear wins. He did not know. And for the first time in his life, not knowing did not feel like failure. It felt like faith. He stood up from the bench. Walked home through the darkening streets. Let himself into his apartment. Sat in the silence that used to feel like emptiness and now felt like potential. Tomorrow he would wake up. Water his plants. Go to work. Help another kid believe in themselves. Continue becoming the man his daughters deserved. And maybe, just maybe, someday they would know him. Someday they would understand. Someday Hope and Grace would look at their father and see not the man who abandoned them, but the man who spent years becoming worthy of them. That was not a promise. Just possibility. And possibility was everything. If this story touched you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you took from this journey. Tell me about the walls you have built and the bridges you are learning to construct. And if you are not subscribed, now is the time. Because on this channel, we do not just tell stories. We tell truths wrapped in stories. Lessons hidden inside love and loss and the slow, painful, beautiful work of becoming better. Thank you for being part of my beautiful family. Until next time, keep choosing love. Even when it is terrifying. Especially when it is terrifying. Because that is where the real stories begin. The end.